So, hello.
Right. Your
My
name? Yeah.
Yeah, my name's John. I'm the gardens coordinator here at Sunseed. That means I take care of the gardens. I try to teach the volunteers who come about how to garden sustainably. So that means everything from how to treat the soil well, how to efficiently use water, and techniques and things like this that we use here. So yeah, we try to provide food for the community as well as medicines and crafts and flowers and teas and this kind of thing as well. So it's not just food production, but how to manage land sustainably.
And how do you deal with the water supply? Because there's a shortage of water in the valley. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So at the moment, we use two main forms of irrigation. The first one being flood irrigation. So we use the acequia, which is an ancient irrigation channel dating back at least 800 years. Some people say more. It comes all the way down the valley from the birth of the river, the Nacimiento. And we use this mostly for flood irrigation, which is when you literally flood the soil, and drip irrigation. Now, because of the mineral content in the water itself, it's very high in minerals and salts. Drip irrigation, which is theoretically very efficient, becomes very inefficient due to it gets blocked with this gypsum, with this minerals. So mostly what we do is flood, which isn't ideal as it wastes a lot of water. It a lot evaporates away, and it actually isn't very good for the soil. It compacts the soil and erodes the soil in the process. So what we try to do is research and experiment with alternative techniques for irrigation. Things like clay pot irrigation, so subterranean irrigation they call it. So it's like watering under the soil, so that you lose this capacity for evaporation. It also protects the soil. Things like clay pots. I have this idea where we sink pipes under the soil with small holes in them, and then we just fill the pipes with water so it slowly seeps out underneath like this, exactly to where the roots of the plants need it. This way we stop the erosion of the soil, we use it much more efficiently, we're losing a lot less to wind, to sun, and this kind of thing. So this is kind of what we're trying to do here. How can we passively irrigate? How can we minimize the water we take? Because it's such a precious resource here, especially in the desert. But not only that, but because our water supply is compromised due to the plantations farther up, which are depleting. I mean, just completely depleting the aquifers. And
can you say what it is, like the million of olive trees?
Yeah, it's millions and millions of olive trees on a few hundred hectares, all illegally pumping from boreholes directly from the aquifers, which is essentially destroying the ecosystem here around where, I mean, we're lucky to live in such a beautiful little oasis here in the desert, but because of that, our life here is threatened. They're over extracting the water in the river. The levels, even in the past year, I've personally seen them drop. If you go downstream down the river, there are 3-4 abandoned villages in between here and the sea, which is only 20-30 kilometers away, because the water is going. It's a way of life that's disappearing. So that's a big thing we need to fight for.
It was an abandoned village here when you arrived, when Sunseed arrived.
Yeah. So this village as well was abandoned 50-60 years ago. I mean, this used to be a central hub. It's Los Molinos de Rio Agua, so the mills of the river water. So there's a town not far away, about 7 kilometers, of about 15,000 people. And in that town, the first light bulb was powered by the mills here in Los Molinos about 100 years ago. I mean, this used to be an important little village.
Yeah, we can still see the walls of the mills. We went to see them 2 days ago. And
there were 5 or 6 of them up and down. Down the river here.
So it shows the power of the water here. There were mills.
Yeah, and the potential for what this place could be.
Yeah.
And what it has been.
And can you tell us as well, so I stopped you, but can you tell us as well about there's another plantation, which this one is illegal, it's not even legal.
The one right
almonds about there's an almond plantation that is illegal.
So at the Nacimiento, which is where essentially the river starts, they have just a few hundred meters past it in the natural park, in the protected area, started preparing for the cultivation of another large, intensive, non-organic plantation of potential hundreds of thousands almond trees, which is very scary. Something so close to the beginning of the river, if it's anything like the other plantations around in this area, it's going to seriously deplete the levels of the water. I mean, we're talking in a matter of 3 or 4 years, the river could dry up, kind of thing. So it's quite a serious problem, actually. You know, I mean, what's going to happen is if the water goes, the people go. That's what happens. If there's not enough water in the river or in the acequia to irrigate our land, to keep things green, to make it habitable, people are going to leave. And when the people leave, the people in this village, when we leave, there's no protection anymore for this place. We're the only ones that care about the ecosystems, about the biodiversity, about the way of life that we are trying to sustain here. So it's a scary thought.
Biodiversity means there's turtles here, there are birds, there's a sanctuary of birds.
There's also 4 or 5 endemic species of plants that only grow in this area.
Wow.
And their habitat is being destroyed.
Can you tell me the name of those plants?
There's 1 or 2 varieties of orchids that I'm aware of. I don't know the others by name, actually. For that, you'd have to speak to, I think, Paloma or Gabia. They're slightly more specialized in this.
Yeah.
But it's scary. It's a destruction of habitat. It's not only that. If you talk to the people in the Mirador, they have a beautiful photo array of I think it's a biologist who came in and photographed all of the endemic species here. So not only the plants, but also the animals. So it's kind of like a picture description of what could potentially be
I think
lost
at David photos of orchids actually and the turtles. Okay, now I see what you mean. Yeah.
And there's you know, like mountain goats and all sorts of wildlife in this area that are being endangered by this loss of habitat. And it all comes down to water. I mean, we know we're in the desert. Without water, it's just going to go barren. If you look to the other side, I'm sure if you can see, beyond the trees there, the other side is barren.
It's dry.
Completely dry and prone to
desert behind here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And without this water, that's what this side of the river is also going to look like.
Yeah.
Without the water, we can't maintain.
Yeah, this is it. We are in the landscape. I mean, we can see from where we stand what can happen. So we're constantly reminded here. That's why it's such a vibrant place. We're reminded of what can happen if we don't look after the oasis.
Exactly. It's just to put it into contrast. About I think 8 years ago, because we have the acequia on this side where we get all of our water. But up until about 8 or 9 years ago, there was also an acequia on the other side. So historically, that barren, brown area of land was also cultivated. This was all terraced. This was olive trees and almond trees and dry land. I mean, the mills of the river water.
We can see on this side as well. We get a picture also of how it looks like when it's an abandoned village here.
Yeah.
It's like,
so I mean, what's happened to that side can happen to this side.
Yeah.
That used to have the water, that used to be a paradise as well. And then due to people moving away, lack of maintenance, overgrazing of the shepherds through this area, and a depletion of the water source, meant that it was no longer viable to cultivate that side. And without our human, let's say, intervention or management, it becomes destroyed. Now you cannot even see most of the terraces that were there. It's just become eroded. You can see there's erosion gullies everywhere. And that mountainside, that habitat for these endangered species is just, with every rain, being washed away down to the sea. And it's terrible. It's horrible. It all comes down to the water. If we don't have enough water to sustain the people aren't going to be here to maintain the land. If the land isn't maintained, it becomes degraded and lost, and it will turn into a full desert.
Yeah, this is why it makes even more sense to live here and to see with your own eyes and what happens and day by day and sustain the land. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.